Genesis chapter 37. Jacob lived in the land where his father had settled, in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob's family. Joseph, a young man of 17, was shepherding the flock with his brothers, the sons of Bela and the sons of Silpah, his father's wives. Joseph informed his father of the bad reputation they had. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other children, for he was the son of his old age, and he had a coat with long sleeves made for him. His brothers, who saw that their father loved him more than he loved them, hated him and could no longer speak to him in a friendly way. Joseph had a dream which, when he told it to his brothers, made them hate him the more. Listen to the dream I had. We were binding sheaves in the field when my sheaf rose and stood up, and your sheaves gathered round and bowed down to my sheep. His brothers said to him, "So you want to rule us or lord it over us?" They hated him even more because of his dreams and what he said. Joseph had another dream which he told to his brothers. "I saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down before me." When he told this to his father and brothers, his father rebuked him. "What is this dream of yours? Are all of us, myself, your mother, and your brothers, to bow to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept in mind what he had said. His brothers had gone to pasture their father's flock at Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing the flock at Shechem. Come along, I will send you to them." Joseph replied, "Here I am." Then his father said, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flock. Then come back and tell me." Jacob sent him from the valley of Hebron, and Joseph arrived at Shechem. A man met him as he was wandering through the countryside and said to him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." The man said, "They have gone from here, for I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went off after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes the specialist in dreams. Now is the time. Let's kill him and throw him into a well. We will say a wild animal devoured him. Then we will see what his dreams were all about." But Reuben heard this and tried to save him from their hands, saying, "Let us not kill him, shed no blood. Throw him in this well in the wilderness, but do him no violence." This he said to save him from them and take him back to his father. So, as soon as Joseph arrived, they stripped him of his long-sleeved coat that he wore, and then took him and threw him in the well. Now the well was empty without water. They were sitting for a meal when they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels laden with spices, balm, and myrrh, which they were taking down to Egypt. Judah then said to his brothers, "What do we gain by killing our brother and hiding his blood? Come, we will sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother and our own flesh. His brothers agreed to this. So, when the Midianite merchants came along, they pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the well. For 20 pieces of silver, they sold Joseph to the Midianites, who took him with them to Egypt. When Reuben went back to the well, Joseph was no longer there. He tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy has disappeared, and what am I to do?" They then took Joseph's coat, killed a goat, and dipped the coat in its blood. They sent the long-sleeved coat and had taken to their father, saying, "This we have found. See if it is your son's coat or not." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's coat. Joseph has been attacked by a wild animal and torn to pieces." Jacob then tore his garments, put on sackcloth, and mourned his son for a long time. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be consoled, saying, "No, I shall go down to the land of shadows, mourning for my son." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the commander of the guard. Genesis chapter 38. It happened at this time that Judah left his brothers and went to stay with Adullamite by the name of Hira. Then Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite called Shua. He married her, and she gave birth to a son whom he called Er. She had another child and called him Onan. And then she had a third child whom she called Shelah. She was at Kesib when she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for Er, his firstborn son. Her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in Yahweh's sight, and the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, "Lie with your brother's widow, and fulfill the duties of your brother-in-law. The child to be born will be the heir of your brother." But Onan knew the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's widow, he spilled the semen on the ground, lest he give an heir to his brother. What he did was displeasing to Yahweh, who took his life as well. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law, "Live as a widow in your father's house until Shelah my son has grown up," for he was afraid that Shelah, like his brothers, might die. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. After a long time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah became consoled, he went to Timnah to his sheep shearers and his friend Hira the Adullamite. It happened that Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." She at once took off her widow's clothes, wrapped herself in a veil, and sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she knew that Shelah was a grown man and had not been given to her in marriage. Judah saw her, and as her face was veiled, he took her for a prostitute. He went over to her on the roadside and said, "Allow me to sleep with you," for he didn't know she was his daughter-in-law. She asked, "What will you give me to sleep with you?" He said, "I will send you a kid from my flock." She replied, "Will you give me a pledge till you send it? What pledge shall I give you?" He asked. She answered, "Give me your seal, your cord and the staff in your hand." So he gave them to her and slept with her. Then she rose and left him, and taking off her veil, she put on her widow's clothes, and she became pregnant. When Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Adulamite, to recover the pledge from the woman, he did not find her. So he questioned the local people, "Where is the prostitute who was by the road at Enaim?" "There has been no prostitute there," they said. He returned to Judah and said, "I didn't find her, and even the local people said that there was no prostitute there." Judah then said, "Let her keep it all for herself, lest the people finally laugh at us. At least I sent her the kid, even if you didn't find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, played the prostitute, and moreover, she is now with child." Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." As they were bringing her out, she sent word to her father-in-law, "I have become pregnant by the man who owns these things. Find out to whom this seal, cord and staff belong." Judah acknowledged them and said, "She is more righteous than I am, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah." And he had no further intercourse with her. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. And when she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife tied a scarlet thread around his wrist, saying, "This one is the firstborn." But he withdrew his hand, and his brother came out first, and she said, "What a rift you have made for yourself." And he was called Perez. Then his brother with the scarlet thread on his wrist came out, and he was given the name Serah. Genesis chapter 39. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, commander of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. Yahweh blessed Joseph while he lived in the house of his master, the Egyptian, and everything went right for him. The Egyptian could see that God was with him, and everything worked well for him. So Joseph pleased his master, who made him overseer of his house and of all that he owned. And from that time, God blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. He blessed all that the Egyptian owned, his household and his land. The Egyptian left all he had to the care of Joseph, and with Joseph fully in charge, he concerned himself with nothing except the food that he ate. Now Joseph was a handsome man and well built. After some time, his master's wife kept noticing him and said, "Sleep with me." But he refused and said to her, "With me in charge, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and has entrusted to me all that he has. He is no more master in this house than I am, and he refuses me nothing except yourself, of course, because you are his wife. How then could I do such an evil thing and sin against God?" Now, although day after day she spoke to Joseph, he would not agree to sleep with her or give himself to her. It happened that one day, when he entered the house to attend to his duties, none of the servants were in the house. Then Potiphar's wife caught hold of Joseph by his cloak, saying, "Come to bed with me." But Joseph left his cloak in her hands and ran out of the house. As soon as he had run out of the house, he called her servants and said, "Look, a Hebrew has been brought here to make fun of us. He came here to lie with me." So I screamed, and when he heard me scream, he left his cloak with me and ran out of the house. Then she kept the cloak by her until the master came home. She then told her story. "That Hebrew slave of yours came to make sport of me, but when I screamed, he left his cloak with me and ran out of the house." When his master heard what his wife told him, "This is how your servant treated me," he blazed with anger. He took Joseph and put him in the royal prison, where the king's prisoners were kept. But while Joseph was in prison, Yahweh was with him and showed him kindness, so that he was well liked by the warden of the prison. The warden put him in charge of all the prisoners and made him responsible for all that was done there. The warden did not interfere with anything that was under Joseph's care, because Yahweh was with him and gave him success in everything he did. Genesis chapter 40. Some time after this, it happened that the cupbearer of the king of Egypt, who prepared the drinks for Pharaoh, and his chief baker offended their lord. Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officers and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was kept. So the captain of the guard appointed Joseph to attend to their needs, for they were under arrest for some time. One night, both of them dreamed, each one his own dream, and each dream had its own meaning. As the 2 officers were with Joseph in custody in his master's house, when Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he questioned them, "Why do you look sad today?" They answered, "Both of us have had a dream, but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Is it not God who interprets dreams? Tell me what they were." Then the chief cupbearer told Joseph what his dream had been. "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As it grew and flowered, its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in his hand." Joseph said to him, "Here is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will release you and restore you to your office, and you will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as before, when you were his cupbearer. But when things go well with you, remember me and be kind enough to speak my name to Pharaoh and get me out of this place. For I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve imprisonment." The chief baker, seeing that interpretation was favorable, said to Joseph, "In my dream, I had on my head 3 baskets of cakes. In the top basket, there were all kinds of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it from the basket above my head." Joseph said, "The 3 baskets are 3 days, and before 3 days have passed, Pharaoh will take off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh." It so happened that on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his officers and remembered the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. The cupbearer was restored to his office and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but the chief baker was hanged as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Genesis chapter 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile when 7 cows, sleek and fat, were coming up from the Nile and beginning to feed among the rushes. Behind them came 7 other cows, lean and scraggy, that stood beside the cows already there. These devoured the sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. He saw growing on one stalk 7 ears of corn that were full and ripe. And after these there sprouted 7 more ears of corn that were small and scorched by the east wind. Now the small ears of corn swallowed the plump and ripe ones. Then Pharaoh awoke. In the morning he was uneasy and called all the magicians and wise men in Egypt. He told his dreams to them, but not one among them was able to interpret his dreams. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, "This reminds me of my wrongs. Pharaoh was angry with his servants and had me put in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, and with me the chief baker. Once on the same night we both had a dream, each with its own meaning. With us was a young Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him our dreams, he interpreted them, giving to each one its own meaning. What he interpreted for us happened. I was restored to my office, and the chief baker was hanged." Pharaoh then had Joseph summoned. They took him quickly from the prison, shaved him, changed his clothes, and he presented himself to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh addressed him, "I have had a dream which no one can explain. Now I have heard that when you hear a dream, you are able to interpret it." Joseph replied, "It is not I, but God who will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Pharaoh then began telling his dream. "I was beside the Nile when 7 fine cows, sleek and fat, came up from the river and began to feed in the rushes. Then 7 other cows came up behind them. These were poor, scraggy, and lean. I had never seen any so ugly in all the land of Egypt. The thin, gaunt cows ate up the 7 fat cows, but after eating them, it was as if they had not eaten them at all, because they remained as lean and scraggy as they were before. And then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears of corn growing on one stalk, full and ripe. Then after them there sprouted 7 ears of corn that were hard and small and withered by the east wind. The withered ears of corn swallowed the good ears. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain its meaning." Then Joseph said, "Pharaoh's dream is one and the same. Yahweh has just revealed to Pharaoh what he will do. The 7 fat cows are 7 years and the 7 good years as well. It's one dream, The 7 lean cows coming after them are 7 years, as are the 7 withered ears of corn scorched by the east wind, and they are 7 years of famine. As I said to Pharaoh, God is revealing to him what he is about to do. There will be 7 years of plenty throughout the land of Egypt, but they will be followed by 7 years of famine. Then the time of abundance will be forgotten, and famine will exhaust the land. So severe will the famine be, that no one will remember the time of plenty. If the dream has been repeated twice for Pharaoh, it is because God has so determined and will soon make it happen. Now it is for Pharaoh to choose an intelligent and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh could have supervisors in the land and could levy a tax of 1/5 of the produce of the land during the 7 years of plenty. They must gather all the food of these productive years that are coming, and by the authority of Pharaoh, store grain for food in the towns and keep it. This food will be a reserve for the 7 years of famine coming to the land of Egypt, so that the people will not die of hunger. The proposal of Joseph pleased Pharaoh and his ministers, and Pharaoh asked them, "Where shall we find such a man possessed with the Spirit of God?" And to Joseph he said, "Since it is to you that God has made known all this, there can be no one as intelligent and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people will obey your orders. Only I myself will be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." He then took the signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He clothed him in fine linen and put up a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the chariot that was second only to his, and they cried out before him, "Make way." Thus he was put in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh. Without your consent, no one is to raise hand or foot in the whole land of Egypt." Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphenath-Paneah and gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. After that, Joseph traveled throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he was summoned to the presence of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. After taking his leave of Pharaoh, he journeyed through the entire land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundantly. So Joseph gathered up all the food that was produced during these years, storing in each town the food from the fields around it. Joseph stored huge quantities of wheat, like the sand from the sea, so much that they lost count of the amount. Before the years of famine came, Asenath, Joseph's wife, had 2 sons. Joseph called the first Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house." He called the second by the name of Ephraim, for he said, "God has given me children in the land of my sorrow." When the 7 years of plenty throughout the land of Egypt came to an end, the 7 years of famine began as Joseph had foretold. There was famine in all the countries, but bread was to be had in every part of Egypt. When the land of Egypt began to suffer from the famine, the people came to Pharaoh for bread. But Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do as he tells you." When the famine had spread throughout the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was indeed severe over the land. As the famine had worsened throughout the whole world, people came from other countries to buy grain from Joseph. Genesis chapter 42. When Jacob heard there was wheat in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you stand looking at one another? I have heard there is grain in Egypt, so go down and buy some for us, so that we may stay alive and not die." Joseph's brothers, 10 of them, went down to Egypt to buy wheat, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, for he said something might happen to him. So the sons of Israel were among those going to buy grain, for there was famine in Canaan. It was Joseph, as governor of the land, who sold grain to all the people. When his brothers arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers, but did not make himself known, and instead said harshly to them, "Where do you come from?" And they answered, "We come from the land of Canaan to buy grain for food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And he remembered the dreams he once had concerning them. He told them, "You are spies, and it is to discover the weak points of the land that you have come." They said, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy grain for food. We are all sons of the same man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." Joseph replied, "No, it is to find out the weak points of the country that you have come." They said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is today with our father, and the other is no more." But Joseph insisted, "It is just as I said, you are spies. And this will be proved. By the life of Pharaoh, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you is to go and fetch your brother. The others will be imprisoned while I verify whether you are telling the truth. If not, then as true as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And so he put them all in prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "I will help you to save yourselves, for I am a man who fears God. If you are sincere, let one of your brothers remain prisoner in the house of the God, where you now are, and the rest of you take the grain to save your families from famine. Then you will bring back your youngest brother, so the truth of what you say will be proved and your lives spared." They did as they were ordered, and said among themselves, "Alas, we are guilty because of the way we treated our brother when he pleaded with us for mercy, but we didn't listen. That is why this trouble has come upon us." Reuben answered them, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen, and now we are brought to account for his blood." Now they did not know that Joseph understood them, as there was an interpreter between them. As for Joseph, he withdrew and wept. When he came back, he spoke to them and took Simeon and had him bound and put in prison while they looked on. Joseph ordered their sacks to be filled with wheat and their money replaced in the sack of each one, and provisions be given them for the journey. All this was done. They loaded the grain on their donkeys and set off. But in the evening, one of them emptied his sack to feed his donkey at the lodging place, and he saw his money at the mouth of the sack. So he said, "My money has been put back. Here it is in my sack." Their hearts failed them, and they trembled and turned to each other and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came back to Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him about all their adventures. "The man who is governor of the country spoke harshly to us and treated us as spies. But we said, 'We are honest men, not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of the same father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man who is lord of the land said, 'By this I will know, if you are honest. Leave one of your brothers here. Take grain to save your families from the famine, and go. Bring back your youngest brother, and let me see you are not spies, but honest men. Then I shall release your brother, and you can trade in the land.' Now, when they emptied their sacks, each one found his money bag in his sack. When they saw this, they were afraid, and their father as well. Jacob their father said to them, 'You are taking my children from me. Joseph has gone, Simeon has gone, and now you are taking Benjamin. I have all this to bear.' Then Reuben said to his father, 'You may have the lives of my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to me, and I shall see that he comes back.' But Jacob said, 'My son will not go with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If he were to meet with some misfortune on the way, you would send my grey head to the land of shadows in sorrow.'" Genesis chapter 43. Now the lack of food was severe in the land. And when they had eaten the grain they brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go down again and buy us a little food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us that our brother had to come with us. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you don't send him, we will not go." For the man said, "You will not be admitted to my presence if your brother is not with you." Israel then said, "Why did you bring this misery on me by letting the man know you have another brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kinsfolk, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' And so we answered these questions. Could we have known that he would tell us to bring our brother?" Judah then said to Israel his father, "Send the boy with me. Let us go so that we, you and our children may live and not die. I will guarantee his safety. If I do not bring him back and set him here before you, I will bear the blame forever. If we hadn't delayed for so long, we could have been there and back twice over." Israel their father said to him, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some choice products of the land in your bags, and a gift for the man. some balm, a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you, and you will repay what was put in your sacks. It may have been a mistake. Take your brother and go back to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy in His presence, so that He will allow you to bring back your other brother and Benjamin. As for myself, if I am bereaved of my children, then bereaved I shall have to be. The men took the gift and the double amount of money as well, and taking Benjamin, they set off and went down to Egypt and were admitted to the presence of Joseph. When Joseph saw that Benjamin was with them, he said to his steward, "Bring these men to my house. Have an animal slaughtered and a meal prepared, for these men will eat with me at noon." The steward did as Joseph directed and brought the men to Joseph's house. They were afraid and said to each other, "It's because of the money that was placed in our sacks the last time that we are brought in. He wants to attack and overpower us and have us as slaves and take our donkeys." So they approached Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the door of the house. "Oh, my lord, we came down here the first time to buy food. And when we reached a lodging place and opened our sacks, we found in the mouth of the sacks each one's money to the full weight. We have brought it back with us, as well as additional money to buy food. We don't know who put the money in our sacks." The steward said, "Be at peace. Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, put a treasure in your grain sacks. Your money reached me safely." He then brought Simeon out to them. The steward took them into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their present and waited for Joseph's arrival at midday, for they heard they were to dine there. When Joseph came into the house, they offered him the gift they had with them and bowed to the ground before him. He asked them how they were and said, "Is your father well? The old man you spoke about, is he still alive?" They answered, "Your servant, our father, is well and is still alive." He looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, the son of his own mother, and said, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he added, "God be good to you, my son." So deeply moved was Joseph on seeing his brother that he wanted to cry and went out quickly and wept in his own private room. After he had washed his face and come out, controlling himself, he said, "Serve the meal." He was served separately, and so were they, and the Egyptians as well, for the Egyptians cannot share a meal with Hebrews. For the Egyptians, this would be a shame. They were seated opposite him in the order of their ages, from the eldest to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. Joseph had portions from his own dish taken to them, and Benjamin's portions was 5 times more than that of the others. So they drank freely with him. Genesis chapter 44. Now Joseph gave this order to his steward: "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put back each man's silver in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup with the money for the grain in the sack of the youngest. The steward did as Joseph had directed. As soon as it was light next morning, the men were sent away with their donkeys. When they had gone, but were still not far from the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Go quickly after those men, and when you have caught up with them, say this, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and uses for divination? You have done a wicked thing.'" When he caught up with them, he repeated these words. They said to him, "Why does my lord speak like that? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. The money we found in the mouths of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we have stolen silver or gold from your lord's house? If one of your servants is found with the object, he will die, and we too will become my lord's slaves." "Very well then," he said, "it will be as you say. The one who is found to have the cup will become my master's slave. The rest of you will go free." Then each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. And he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and reloading their donkeys, they returned to the city. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers returned, and they threw themselves on the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What have you done? Didn't you know that a man such as I am is able to practice divination?" Then Judah said, "What shall we say to my lord? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are my lord's slaves, we and the one who has been found with the cup." But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do that. Only the man found to have the cup will be my slave. As for the rest, go back in peace to your father." Judah then went forward and said, "My lord, allow your servant to speak. Do not be angry with your servant, although you are equal to Pharaoh himself. The last time you questioned your servants, saying, 'Have you a father or a brother?' We said to my lord, 'We have an aged father who had a child in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left of his mother's children, and his father loves him.' Then you said to us, 'Bring him down, so that I can see him for myself.' We told my lord that the boy could not leave his father, for if he did, his father would die. You then told us that if our youngest brother did not come with us, we would not be admitted to your presence. All this we said to our father on returning there. So when he told us to come back and buy a little food, we said, 'We cannot go down again unless our youngest brother is with us. We shall not be admitted to the Lord's presence unless our brother is with us.' Then my father said, 'You know that my wife had 2 children. One went away from me and has surely been torn to pieces, since I have not seen him anymore. If you take this one from me and something happens to him, you will bring my grey hair in sorrow to the grave. Now I can't return to my father without the boy, for my father loves him very much. If he sees that the boy is not there, he will die, and we will have sent the grey hairs of our father in sorrow to the grave. Now I, your servant, guaranteed the boy's safety and said to my father, if I do not bring him back, I will bear the blame before you all my life. So now, let me take the place of the boy and stay here as slave, and let the boy go with his brothers, for I can't return to my father without the boy. Do not let me see the misery that would be too much for my father. Genesis chapter 45. Now Joseph could no longer control his feelings in the presence of all those standing by, and he called out, "Leave my presence, everyone." And only his brothers were with him when Joseph made himself known to them. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard, and the news spread through Pharaoh's house. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" And his brothers could not answer because they were terrified at seeing him. Joseph said, "Come closer." And they drew nearer. "I am Joseph, your brother. Yes, it is me, the one you sold to the Egyptians. Now don't grieve and reproach yourselves for selling me, because God has sent me before you to save your lives. It's 2 years since famine has been in the land, and there will be another 5 years without tilling and without harvest. God has sent me ahead of you to make our race survive there and to save many of you. So it was not you, but God who sent me here and made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of his household and ruler also of all the land of Egypt. Go back quickly to my father and say to him, Joseph your son sends you this message. God has made me lord of all Egypt, so come down to me without delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and your herds, all that you have. And there I will provide for you, for there will be 5 more years of famine, lest you and your household and all who belong to you be in need. Now you can see for yourselves, and your brother Benjamin can see, that it is I myself who speak to you. You will tell my father of the glory I have in Egypt, and of all that you have seen. Go quickly and bring my father down here." Joseph then threw his arms around Benjamin and wept. Then weeping, he kissed and embraced his brothers, and they began to talk with him. The news spread through Pharaoh's house, "Joseph's brothers are here." And the news pleased both Pharaoh and his officials. Pharaoh told Joseph, "Let your brothers load their beasts, return to the land of Canaan, and bring their father and their families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will enjoy the fat of the land. As for yourself, give them this order: take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives. Get your father and come. Never mind the things you leave there, for the best in all Egypt is yours." The sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them wagons as Pharaoh had ordered, and provisions for the journey. To each one he gave a festal garment, but to Benjamin he gave 300 silver coins and 5 festal garments. To his father he sent 10 asses loaded with all the best goods in Egypt, and 10 donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away And as they left, he said, "Don't quarrel on the way." They returned from Egypt and came back to Jacob their father in Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is alive, and he is the ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned, for he could not believe them. But they told him all that Joseph had said, and showed him the wagons that Joseph sent to carry him. Then Jacob's spirit revived, and he said, "It is enough. My son Joseph is alive. I will go and see him before I die." Genesis chapter 46. Israel left with all he owned, and he reached Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in visions that he had during the night. "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he said. "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I will go with you to Egypt, and I will bring you back again, and Joseph's hand will close your eyes." Jacob left Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob their father with their little children and their wives in the wagons that Joseph had sent to fetch him. They also took their flocks and all that they had acquired in Canaan. And so it was that Jacob came to Egypt, and with him all his family, his sons and his grandsons, his daughters and his granddaughters. In short, all his children he took with him to Egypt. Here are the names of the descendants of Israel who came to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Sohar, and Shaul, whose mother was a Canaanite. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, Er, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Serah. But Er and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Puva, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jachleel. These are the sons of Leah, Jacob's wife, who were born in Padan Aram, together with his daughter Dinah. Together his sons and his daughters numbered 33. The sons of Gad, Sipion, Haggai, Shuni, Espon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Imna, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, with Sarah their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malkiel. These are the sons of Silpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter. And Jacob was their father, 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whose mother was Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, the priest of On. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Jerah, Naaman, Ei, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, 14. The children of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jasil, Guni, Jeser, and Shillem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and Jacob was their father, 7 persons in all. The total number of all the persons who came to Egypt with Jacob All who were of his own blood, not counting the wives of his sons, was 66. With the 2 sons born to Joseph in Egypt, the total number of Jacob's household that came to Egypt was 70. Jacob sent Judah ahead to let Joseph know he was coming and that he would soon arrive in the land of Goshen. Joseph got his chariot ready in order to meet Israel his father in Goshen. He presented himself, threw his arms around his father, and wept on his shoulder for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now I can die, for I have seen your face and know you are alive." After that, Joseph said to his brothers and all his father's family, "I will go and give the news to Pharaoh and tell him that my brothers and my father's family who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. I will also tell him that you are shepherds, keeping livestock, and have brought your flocks and cattle and all your belongings. So when Pharaoh summons you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you will say, 'Your servants keep flocks and herds. It has been so since our youth, and for our fathers before us.' Then you will settle in the land of Goshen, for the Egyptians detest all shepherds." Genesis chapter 47. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and brothers with their sheep and cattle and all their possessions have come from the land of Canaan to Goshen." He then presented 5 of his brothers to Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked, "What are your occupations?" And they replied, "Your servants are shepherds, as were our fathers before us. We have come to settle in the land, for there is no more pasture for our sheep. So severe is the famine in the land of Canaan. And now we pray you, may we stay in the land of Goshen?" Pharaoh then spoke to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Let your father and brothers settle in the best part. Let them settle in Goshen, and if among them there are capable men, put them in charge of my cattle." Joseph brought in Jacob his father and presented him to Pharaoh, who then asked him, "How old are you?" Jacob replied, "The years of my wanderings are 130. Brief and difficult have been the years of my life, and not as many as those of my fathers." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and withdrew from his presence. So Joseph had his father and brothers settled, giving them property in the best part of Egypt, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and his father's entire household with food according to the number of their dependents. Now, so severe was the famine that no bread was to be had in all the land. Both Egypt and Canaan were exhausted because of the famine. Joseph then collected all the money that had been given to buy bread in the lands of Egypt and Canaan. All this money Joseph took to Pharaoh's house. When all the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph saying, "Give us bread. Why must we die before your eyes for want of money?" Joseph told them, "Give me your cattle to pay for bread, since you have no money." So they brought their livestock, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for their horses, sheep, and cattle, and even their donkeys. In that way, he supplied them with food for that year. The following year, they came to him again and said, "We will not hide from our Lord that all our money is gone, and that our cattle now belong to you. All that is left to us are our persons and our land. Why should we die while you look on ourselves and our land? So buy us and our land for bread. We shall be in bondage to you and Pharaoh. Give us grain that we may live and not die, and our land remain desolate. So it was that Joseph acquired all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold their fields. So cruelly hard-pressed were they by the famine. Pharaoh became owner of the land, and Joseph reduced the people to servitude from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, because by a decree of Pharaoh they lived on what had been given to them by Pharaoh. For that reason they did not sell the land that belonged to them. Then Joseph said to the people, "Now that I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh, here is seed for you to sow the land. Harvest time you will give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 will be yours, for seed, for sowing, for food for yourselves and your families." They said, "You have saved our lives. If it please my Lord, we shall be Pharaoh's serfs." So Joseph introduced a statute that remains to this day, whereby a fifth of the produce goes to Pharaoh. Only the land of the priests did not become Pharaoh's. So Israel lived in Egypt in the land of Goshen. They became owners of this land. They had many children and greatly increased in number. Jacob lived for 147 years, 17 of them in the land of Egypt. When his life was drawing to a close, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, "If you wish to be faithful and kind to me, place your hand under my thigh and promise me that you will not bury me in Egypt. But when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their tomb." Joseph said, "I will do as you say." Jacob insisted, swore to it. He swore to him, and Israel fell back on his pillow. Genesis chapter 48. Sometime later, when Joseph was told that his father was ill, he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So they told Jacob that Joseph his son had come. Then Israel, mastering his strength, sat up in bed. And he said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, saying, I will make you fruitful and increase your number, and I will make of you a group of nations, and I will give this land to you and to your descendants after you, as an everlasting possession. From now on, your 2 sons who were born in Egypt, before I came to you here, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Only the children born after them will be yours, and the land they inherit shall be known by the names of Ephraim and Manasseh. When I was returning from Padan, to my sorrow Rachel died on the journey at some distance from Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph told his father, "They are the sons that God has given me here." Jacob said, "Bring them to me, that I may bless them." As Israel's eyes were dim with age, he could no longer see. When Jacob brought them near, he kissed and embraced them and said to Joseph, "I didn't expect to see you again, and now God is letting me see your children as well." Joseph lifted them from Israel's knees, and he himself bowed low, his face to the ground. Joseph then took them both, Ephraim by his right hand to Israel's left, and Manasseh by his left hand to Israel's right. Israel raised his right hand and placed it on Ephraim's head, although he was the younger, and placed his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God in whose presence my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd from my birth to this day, the angel who has saved me from every evil, bless these boys, and in them may my name live on and that of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly on the earth." Joseph was displeased when he saw his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head. So he took his father's hand from Ephraim's head to place it on Manasseh and said, "Not like that, father, for this one is the elder. Place your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will be great and become a nation. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." He blessed them that day in these words, "Through you, Israel will bestow this blessing. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." So he placed Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am going to die. God will be with you, and he will bring you back to the land of your fathers. And to you, over and above what goes to your brothers, I give a mountain slope that I took from the Amorites with my sword and my bow." Genesis chapter 49. Jacob then called his sons and said, "Gather round, sons of Jacob, and listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, and the first fruits of my manhood, excelling in honor and excelling in power. Restless as water, you will excel no more, for you went to your father's wife, onto my bed and defiled it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not share their counsel. Let my heart keep far from their company. For in anger they killed men and hamstrung oxen at their pleasure. A curse on their anger, for it is fierce. A curse on their fury, so cruel. I will divide them among Jacob and scatter them among Israel. Judah, your brothers will praise you. You shall seize your enemies by the neck. Your father's sons shall bow before you. Judah, a young lion, you return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he stoops and crouches, and like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? The scepter shall not be taken from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom it belongs, and who has the obedience of the nations. He ties his pole to a vine, and he is as called to the choicest branch. He washes his garments in wine, and his robe in the juice of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun lives by the seashore. He is a haven for the ships, and his plank stretches to Sidon. Issachar is a sturdy ass, lolling beside the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. He bends his back to the burden, and submits to forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper on the path, that bites the horse's heels, making the rider fall backwards. In your salvation, I hope, O Yahweh. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food will be rich, and he will provide delicacies fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. Archers attacked him fiercely and sorely provoked him, but his bow remained steady and his arms nimble, because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of the God of your father, your helper, because of God Almighty who blesses you, with blessings from heaven above, with blessings from the deep below, with blessings of the breast and the womb. The blessings of your father are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, the bounty of the everlasting hills. May they all rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the one who is a prince among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours his prey, and in the evening he divides the spoil. These are all the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is what his father said when he blessed them, giving each one a special and appropriate blessing. He then gave them these instructions: I am soon to be gathered to my people. Bury me near my fathers, in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre in Canaan, the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite as a burial place. It was there that Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There they buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were purchased from the Hittites. When Jacob had given these instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed. He breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Genesis chapter 50. Joseph threw himself on his father, wept over him, and kissed him. Then, as Joseph had instructed them, his physicians embalmed Israel his father. This took a full 40 days, the length of time required for embalming. The Egyptians mourned him for 70 days. When the days of mourning were over, Joseph spoke to Pharaoh's household. If you wish to show me kindness, please let Pharaoh know that when my father was dying, he made me swear that I would bury him in the tomb he had made ready for himself in Canaan. Ask him to let me go up and bury my father. I will come back again. Pharaoh said, Go and bury your father as he made you swear to do. Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went all Pharaoh's officials, the elders of his household, and all the elders of Egypt, as well as all belonging to the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks and herds were left in the land of Goshen. With the chariots and horsemen that went up with him, it was a very imposing caravan. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad near the Jordan, they carried out a solemn and long lamentation, and there Joseph mourned his father for 7 days. When the Canaanites witnessed this mourning, they said, This is a solemn mourning ceremony of the Egyptians. That is why this place, which is east of the Jordan, was called Abel Mizraim. Jacob's sons did as he had ordered them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, that Abraham had bought from Ephron the Hittite for a burial place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all those who had gone up with him for the burial. When Joseph's brothers realized that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph turns against us in hate because of the evil we did him?" So they sent word to Joseph, saying, "Before he died, your father told us to say this to you: please forgive the crime and the sin of your brothers in doing evil to you. Forgive the crime of the servants of your father's God." When he was given the message, Joseph wept. His brothers went and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph reassured them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to do me harm, but God intended to turn it to good in order to bring about what is happening today, the survival of many people. So have no fear. I will provide for you and your little ones." In this way, he touched their hearts and consoled them. Joseph remained in Egypt together with all his father's family. He lived for 110 years, long enough to see Ephraim's great-grandchildren, and also to have the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, placed on his knees after their birth. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am going to die, but God will surely remember you and take you from this country to the land he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Joseph then made the sons of Israel swear, saying, "When God comes to bring you out from here, carry my bones with you." Joseph died at the age of 110. They embalmed him and laid him in a coffin in Egypt.